Welcome back to Living Limitless, Conquer Shame, and Play Your Way to Freedom. I'm Andrea Luzon, Legacy Liberator. I'm an explorer. I guide women on a journey to reignite their passion, their purpose, and their power. I do this through biofield therapy, and my specific quantum healing modality is called reconnective healing. And I'm more than happy to talk to all of you about that later. But today we have as our guest Nikki Brafman, and I would just love for Nikki to go ahead and introduce herself and tell us a little bit about your work.
Thanks so much for having me, Andrea. My name is Nikki Brafman. I'm a human design reader, a manifestation coach, a mom, a podcaster, a keynote speaker. And I came to this healing journey through my own story of total and utter burnout and chaos. I was someone who kept chaos as the cadence is my preferred cadence because it made me feel really, really productive to sort of eradicate it and to keep it at bay. But what I began to understand as I studied myself and my own personal development was that I was the creator of that chaos, and I needed to learn how to live in a lot more love and a lot more acceptance and a lot more peace with who I was as an innate being. And the chaos was mostly coming from me trying to live outside of that. And so I found this modality called human design, which is a quantum modality that brings spiritual practices like the Hindu Brahmin chakra system, astrology, the Chinese I Ching, and the Kabbalah, and sort of matches it with modern sciences like biochemistry, genetics, quantum mechanics, and astronomy. And this very, very, very dense system is able to give us a big understanding of the underpinnings of our sort of energy and our energetic blueprint, and remind us all that we are 100% all unique beings. And even if there's a chance that you have the exact same chart as someone, which would require you being born minutes apart in the same place, you have different lived experiences. And so honoring both sides of that equation, the life you've lived and the sort of energetic undertones of your life, and truly starting to accept that is a big part of the work that I do with individuals who are soul searching, with entrepreneurs, with corporate teams, and helping them to really find that homeostasis and that really brilliant place of living inside your inner genius.
It's something that just stuck out to me in that moment was when you said, even if you were born the same minute or within a few minutes of someone, same place, same date, all the things. I was thinking of my twins. This has come up before in astrology readings because my twins are so different and they were born the same minute. And so sometimes, and I know I didn't give you their birth time and stuff, although that would have been a fun journey to look at that. But how does have you had that experience before where a client is a twin?
I actually have twin brothers.
You have twin
So my younger brothers are twins, and they're born like 6 minutes apart, but their charts are identical, right? So nothing cosmically changed in those 6 minutes in that particular day and time. And they have a lot of similarities, but they are fundamentally very different, and they walk through life very differently, and they speak differently, and they carry themselves differently. And it's not like they had a very similar as you can have lived experience, right? Mm-hmm. They grew up in the same house. They had the same friends. Their best friends as children were also twins. And so they had this, as close as you can get, both from, the human design perspective and their energy, mm-hmm. and from their lived experiences. And they're still completely different and wildly unique from each other. So if you can kind of look at that and understand that two people in the most similar experiences that you could possibly have outside of basically a controlled scientific experiment, versus, you and me who have different energies and different life experiences, and us and our partners or our friends or our colleagues who have all had, these unique experiences, that we get to honor that. And when we honor that, and when we honor people for their unique geniuses, instead of trying to fit them into some kind of box so that we understand people better, we live a much more abundant, exciting life.
Mhm. Yeah. So even though astrology gave them so much of the same qualities, they still can manifest, or I guess we're going to talk about manifestation shortly, but so they can, those same traits can, some can be more pronounced than others. Yeah, it's just so interesting. Maybe we get to do I get to talk with you later about the twins and what's possible. I've never had a human design reading for anyone in my family. I've checked out the Enneagram. I thought that was fascinating, and checked out just, their sun sign. So I'm born in November, late in November. I'm a Sagittarius. My kids are also Sagittarians. So that's interesting. My poor husband. A bunch of wild children running around in his house. So that would just be really fascinating to look into my kids and learn more about their charts. That would be fascinating.
Yeah,
So
it's fun. It's the way I actually got into it. My one of my clients, I was doing a lot more on the business coaching side when I started this, and one of my clients brought human design to me, and I had seen it like in a Goop article or something, and I was like, that's interesting. And she said, I want to be the human design person for children, for parents, to help to understand how to parent their children best and how they work and how they flow. And at the time I was very early stages pregnant with my first son. And I was like, I got to know more about this. I have to be able to parent this child in their own unique way. And I just fell head over heels in love with the system. I went really deep, really fast. And I kind of joke that I gave myself a PhD by myself, just going hard into all of the books and resources I possibly could, at a really, really fast pace.
wow. Well, speaking of that, I know later on we get to talk about manifestation, but to give an example of how human design works, I mean, I know that I'm a man gen, a manifesting generator. I actually, maybe later we can talk a little bit about projectors, and there are two others that I really don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Reflector?
So reflectors are one of them. So when we talk about human design, there's actually many, many, many elements we can talk about, right? There's what we call energy type, which is what you're discussing. There's authority, which is the way that we're built energetically to make decisions. There's profile, which is our role that we're meant to play. There's 64 different gates that can be lit up or not lit up in our chart, which are sort of strengths, weaknesses, and there's channels, and there's these larger, it marries astrology too. So there's all of these different sort of planetary experiences and how you would uniquely experience all of these transits. It's very, 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 very dense. What I talk about and what I love to talk about is going really deep into the basics and helping people embody to a deep, 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 deep level these first three elements that we talk about. Energy type, right? What is your energy and how are you made to move through the world? And some of the corresponding things that go with that, like strategy, how you use that energy type, your life theme and your not self theme, a particular theme that goes in tandem with your energy type. And then your authority, how you're built to make decisions, and your profile. So if you take those three things and you study those really, 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 really deeply to the point of being able to embody them, you're going to change your life, no matter where you are or what you're doing. Because those, if you really think about those things, how do I move through the world? How do I make decisions? What role am I here to play? You can get a ton of permission about the things that have felt really resonant throughout your life. And then you can get a ton of opportunity to change what has felt dissonant. But as humans, and most of the people I work with have lived quite a lot of life so far, it's hard to make those changes. And so I personally, my own style is to go really, really, really deep on those three elements. And then with advanced practitioners, we kind of sometimes go deeply into the other stuff. But man, is there so much that you can do with just knowing those three things. So what you mentioned, being a manifesting generator, is one of the 5 types of energy that we have. So we have generators, and technically manifesting generators are a subtype of generators who together make up about 70% of people in this world. So most people are generators and manifesting generators. And these people are like almost the skilled tradespeople of our world. They're people who like to go, 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 do. They have a ton of life force energy, but only for the things that truly light them up. And the big difference between a generator and a manifesting generator is that manifesting generators tend to be like multi-hyphenate. They tend to like a lot of different things. So you want to, do some podcasts and do this and do that. You might have a ton of different hobbies or a ton of different ways to express those hobbies. And just that's the biggest sort of difference between them, is that essence of being that multi-hyphenate. Then the next most common is a projector, which represents about 20% of people in the world. And projectors are our wisdom keepers, our guides. They are heavily empathic. And I sometimes call them the lighthouse. So they're really here to sort of take on our energy, feel what's going on, and project out information, wisdom, guidance for kind of the collective at large. They're also meant for people to come to them, like to be magnetic to people, instead of kind of going out there and saying, here's my advice for you, and you. They are really, their strategy, as we call it, is to wait for an invitation, so that they don't get this sense of bitterness, that comes with sort of unsolicited advice that we would experience in our day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. The fourth type is manifestors. They represent about 9% of people in the world. I am a manifester. We are here to initiate and inform and kind of get things started and then back away. We sort of provide the initiation and the starting point for a lot of generators and manifesting generators to decide, is this something I want to pick up, right? So if as a manifester, I say, I want to build a building over there, you might say, well, I'm a bricklayer. I would love to respond yes to that. Or you might say, I'm a knitter. I can't help you here, right? And so that's kind of the exchange of energy that happens there. Manifestors will often have a lot of anger around that initiation, because it's very, very difficult as children and as young adults to just initiate and have things go your way. And so a lot of manifestor work is to sort of both finding your voice again and being able to initiate without censorship and censoring yourself, but also to be able to kind of go back and understand that, I can be that powerful initiator, even though I have a lot of subconscious limiting beliefs that tell me I'm not allowed to initiate, because we don't let 5-year-olds, say I want to build a building over there, or we don't take them seriously when they do say it, because they definitely do say it. And the last one, which is very, very rare, is a reflector. Reflectors represent under 1% of the population. In all of my readings of thousands of chart, I think I've read for 6 or 7 reflectors. So reflectors basically don't have any access to consistent and reliable energy of their own. All of their energy is an amplification and a magnification of the energy of their environment. So they're literally our mirrors. When a reflector is not doing well, we understand that environment is not, something's going on energetically and wonky in that environment. When they're doing really well and things are surprising them and it's exciting, things are really good in that environment. So it's amazing to be able to bring a reflector into your life, because they're who they are being, the emotions they're feeling, what they are saying, the way they're acting, their intuition, all of that is literally an amplification and a magnification of you, right? Of yourself. So those are the 5 energy types. Do you want to pause there and just chat about that for a few minutes?
Yeah. I think I missed one. I got generators, projectors, manifestors, reflectors.
Then manifesting generators.
Oh, okay. So man gens are their own category. Okay.
Yeah. Some people will look at them as not their own category, and some people will say they're only the subtype of the generators. Some people will say that it's sort of nobody has there's no overt answer, but there's certainly, I consider them different because I think they behave a lot, really differently. But I will say that they have similar, what we call strategy. So that strategy to respond, right? Am I a bricklayer or am I a knitter? Like, or am I both, right? As a manifesting generator.
Right.
And
Jills of many trades.
Very much so. But they're in their essence, they're very similar.
Okay. Wow. Well, I'm just, now I wish I had spent some time, or I guess now I'm feeling like there's an opportunity for me to look into the people around me. Because I know that Enneagram was very helpful in understanding my husband.
Yeah. And that's, I think what's so beautiful is you can look at these charts of the people around you, whether they're your partner or your children or the people who you work with, and just give them some grace. I know my husband's a manifesting generator, and so is my son. And these two spin circles around me all day long. Literally, I feel like all they do is run in circles around me. And I don't have to get either on myself and say, why aren't you keeping up? Because I know that that's not my energy type. And I don't have to get on them and say, why are you both total lunatics? Like, can you please slow down? Because that's their energy type. And that is not a perfect science by any means. We still, we still misunderstand each other plenty, but when it boils down to it, understanding the sort of uniqueness of the person in front of you helps you to say, like, we're not supposed to be the same. This human interaction and communication isn't supposed to be seamless, right? Like, we have this kind of idea that there's 7.7 billion people in this world and everything should just flow seamlessly. And it doesn't. And, we put people into boxes, and in order to educate and clothe and govern 7.7 billion people in this world, we have to kind of put people into these boxes. And I think it's our job as individuals to say, thank you for nourishing me with this box. I've outgrown it. And here's the way that I would like society to work with me in my, deepest sense of uniqueness.
Yeah. And when you talked about that, I liked how you said, as a human design coach or as a human, you are one who mentors utilizing this aspect that you were saying. You talk about energy type, authority, and profile. So I feel like we talked about energy type, but so authority and then profile, what do those two really mean?
Yeah, so we have 7 different types of authority in human design. And authority really is the way that you're built to make decisions. And when you look and study this, what you realize is going on in the world is that we're all giving each other a hard time about the way that we're making decisions. And we're all kind of second guessing ourselves. And when you have this thing where you say, here's your tool, this is the tool that you are built to make decisions with, you basically get a lot of clarity, and you can kind of turn the volume down on a lot of that noise. So you and I actually have the same authority. It's what's called emotional authority. It means that you and I need to take some time to process a decision. We need to sort of ride what's called the emotional wave. So even in the conversation that has led us to this moment, right, to recording this conversation, you reached out to me and you asked, would you like to do this? And I immediately was like, this sounds wonderful. And then my bottom was like, do I have time for this? And then I went back and I was like, but this seems like a really great opportunity. And I went back and forth and back and forth. And traditional sort of capitalist ethos would tell us that you're being so indecisive, like, decide already. It's not that big of a deal. It's a few hours of your time. But what I know about myself is that I have this emotional authority. And my best thing was to say to you, this sounds so beautiful. Can I take the night to think about it and get back to you tomorrow or the next day, to allow that emotional wave to ride and understand what the depth of the decision is? Because if we're going really, really, really high with something and then really, really low and then back and forth, it signals to us that that's a big decision, right? That's not a, what am I going to have for lunch decision? That's a monster decision versus something that might seem like a monster decision, like, where should I move? And it might have these tiny little waves of like, that'd be fun and it won't be so bad and all these types of things. We're like, well, that's actually not a big decision. And we can remove the should aspect of finding a new house should be a big decision, or getting on a podcast should be a small decision. And so we can figure out what we really genuinely, truly believe about this. That's just one out of these 7 different. And some people are made to make sort of snap decisions, very, very like binary yes or no, like from their gut. That's what, people call when they say make a gut decision. Some people are meant to make sort of intuitive decisions. Some people are meant to speak their decisions and hear themselves say it, and they can hear, they can make decisions that way. Some people are meant to basically have other people counsel them into decisions. And so when you know this, you basically get a really good sense of when you're out of integrity, right? So if things feel weird and things are like, how did I get here? You can kind of march back a little bit and say, where did I kind of step out of line? Where was I maybe not acting with my energy type? Where did I not follow my authority? And for me, I know that so often that happens when I try to make a really quick decision and I don't give time for myself to emotionally process. And I find myself in a scenario where I'm like, even something as simple as a friend saying, do you want to go to lunch next week? And I'm like, yep, let's do it. Let's put it on the calendar. And then next week rolls around and I'm like, oh, I love this person, but I don't want to do this right now. And we override and we do it anyway. And all of the things that happen from that maybe are wonky, and like maybe the food wasn't good, or maybe there was traffic getting there, or something, just doesn't feel in flow because it started with this kind of seed of lack of flow and a seed of dissonance. And so that's what authority really is. It's really about knowing how you're built to make decisions and not then leading a perfect life, right? None of this is about perfection. And that was something I had to really work on as I started studying, because I kept having this feeling, which was, if I just know everything about my design, my life will suddenly unfold in the most perfect way. And what I understood and what I kind of teach with my clients is that it's never going to be perfect. And your knowledge is, human design reminds us that we are contradictions of ourselves all over the place, that we can live in this sort of, not even in the duality, right, of being two opposite things at once, but non-duality, being everything at once, and be okay with that. And so that's kind of a big part of this journey. Profile is the role that we're meant to play. So there's 12 different profile archetypes, but you and I could have the same archetype. And I don't, just double checking, we don't, but we could, and lead our lives in completely different ways. And so the profile archetype will tell us, do we do better off like alone or with community? Do we do better off? Are we kind of looking at things with a bird's eye view, or are we looking really at the ground view and really learning from experience? Or all of these kind of factors come into play. And there are 2 lines that happen in this profile. And so your lines are 6 and 2, mine are 4 and 6. So we do share a line. And I'll just do a quick rundown of the lines so that people who are listening can sort of get a sense of them. The 1 line is this kind of forever learner who wants to learn from experts and wants to kind of dig, and is that foundational energy. And so that foundational energy will dig, a lot of times forgetting that all of that digging and all of that education from experts has made them the expert, and that it's kind of their time to shine and show that to other people. And a lot of people usually perceive them as having that deep foundational energy and having that kind of deep sense of safety, like, oh, they've studied it, they've done the research, I'm safe with them. The 2 line we call the inner genius line, or the hermit line. And that is people who, and you have this in your chart, have a sense of, they have this deep, dense set of knowledge, but they don't necessarily know how they know what they know, or why they know what they know. And our society often tells people that that's wrong and that that's not okay. You have to know your sources. You have to know where it's coming from. And what this causes these 2 lines to do is sort of retreat and be a hermit when they're constantly being questioned. And it's not fair because they don't actually know how they know what they know or why they know it. They just know it inherently. So the best thing for 2 lines to do is surround themselves with people who are extremely trusting and find their wisdom to be really nourishing without having to kind of hack at them about why do you know that and how do you know that. The 3 line is the experimenter. So we call this 3 line the experimenter. They really have to, all their learning has to be experiential. So this is the type of person who you say, hey, don't touch the hot stove. And they'll say, I have to touch the hot stove to know what hot is. And they go through life and they experiment and they experience things. And that's where a lot of their wisdom comes from. And those people need to make sure that they're in environments that allow for experimentation and don't ask them to say, no, that's not safe. So a lot of times in the workplace, I'll see 3 lines who have so much capacity for experiment, who are being kind of told, no, we're not allowed to do that. That's not how things are done here. And even just giving them a little bit of leeway to say, you know what, we can experiment on this project, but I'd love to get your thoughts on and experiments on this area of our business, gives them just so much sense of self and power and empowerment to be able to do what they need to do. The 4 line is the community line. I have this in my chart. Basically, all my things, all my networks, everything comes from community. When I sold my house last year, I sold it to a friend of a friend. When I met my husband, it was through a community event. So this is kind of the idea that a rising tide lifts all ships. The more I invest in my community, the more my community will invest back in me. The 5 line is the problem solver line. And this is the type of person who just kind of walks into a room where people are pulling their hair out looking for the answer and is like, obviously the answer is this. And people are like, wow, that's incredible. How did you do that? And what a 5 line always needs to be aware of is that what is obvious to them may not always be obvious to everybody else around them. So a 5 line who is not in their energy or not in confident energy might walk past that room, hear what was going on and say, oh, they'll figure it out. It's such an easy fix. They'll get it, and walk and not kind of give that genius back to the collective. And the last line is the 6 line. And you and I both also share this. 6 lines live life in 3 different phases. And so the first phase, 0 to 30, is a phase like the 3 line of total and utter experimentation. Try all the things, live in all the places, do all the stuff. Then from 30 to 50, it is an opportunity for alchemy. And really what we're starting to do in this period of time is to take all of that experience and to alchemize it into wisdom. It's almost as if on our Saturn return, 30th birthday, we're given this machine and in goes the widget of experience and out pops this widget of wisdom. And then we start kind of collecting those and we start, putting them one on top of each other. And then suddenly we have this, by 50, have this throne of wisdom. And at 50, that process becomes innate, right? It becomes muscle memory. You don't need that machine anymore. And every experience that you have kind of gives you some innate wisdom, and people start coming to you. And I don't know if you've had this experience, Andrea, but I've had the experience where someone will come to me for advice and I'm like, yeah, I actually went through that when I was 17 living abroad. That's wild. And so 6 lines tend to have that experience.
That is so fitting. Thank you for reminding me about that, because that's been shared with me before, and yet it's totally landing. It's landing in a different way. The alchemy of the age 30 to 50. What happens after age 50?
Oh, you just get to ride in that.
You just ride the wave.
That wave of beautiful wisdom forever. Ride it out. Yeah. And so those are, we've already covered a lot, right? Energy type, profile, authority. And if you think about it, there can be thousands of permutations of all of those different things. And so already we're getting to see, oh, wow, this is how I'm so unique compared to someone else, even someone who also is a manifesting generator, even maybe someone who's an emotional manifesting generator and has a different profile than me. And so there's so many different ways for this to kind of go and to start understanding. And so you can go so deep without having to learn the entire system, which is quite dense.
Yeah, the chart, I have been shown my chart with the throat open, but spleen not open, or different things like that. which was fascinating. And it does add to everything you've said. And yet I was like, why is this line solid? And this line
Right?
doesn't touch this thing.
You could have the same energy type, the same profile, the same authority, the same defined and undefined centers. So that means like in your chart, when you're looking at it, the same ones that are colored in or same ones that are white, and have a completely different setup of gates, right? So it just reinforces like everybody is so unique. And the more we know about just how unique we are, and the more we give ourselves permission to go live our life according to that unique way, the better it is.
Awesome. Outstanding. Thank you so much for that. I feel like I just got the best refresher ever after hearing about this just a little bit. I remember I was checking out your social media and just really inspired about what you have shared about the concept of manifesting and how we've all seen, and now the movie's not going to land. What the bleep do we know? Or no, maybe it was one of the Dan Brown movies, but it's basically about the law of attraction. Everyone's heard of the law of attraction. And so I'd love to hear what, you're clearly very experienced and you support individuals that are wanting their best life, of course. And so how do you support individuals in creating that? And what have we been doing wrong in regards to this topic of attracting and manifesting?
Yeah. So a lot of what's going on in the wellness and spiritual community right now around manifestation is like this love and light, law of attraction. I'll just think my way there, which isn't wrong, but it's only half the story. And so one of my favorite authors, Carolyn Elliott, she likens that kind of methodology or that way of trying to attract what you want as like staring into the sun while you stand in a pile of shit. And I kind of laugh at that always because it's true, right? If you don't deal with what you're standing in, if you don't deal with your foundation, you can stare into the light all you want. You're still going to be standing in a pile of shit. And if you look down and you honor where I came from, what my shadows are, what's keeping me blocked, you can just move out of that. You can just walk right out of that pile of shit, or you can clean yourself off. But if you don't know that, and you're not giving permission to say, it's all love and light, it's all super easy, I'm just going to blind myself by staring into the sun, you're really missing half the story. So the other part of that I find very toxic in our current kind of mainstream manifestation spiritual world is that we're often being sold prescriptions. So we see someone on Instagram who's really, by the looks of it, got their life together. They've got a gorgeous house and a car and a partner and oodles of money and happiness. And they're pinging us on Instagram from a beach somewhere far away and beautiful. And they say, all you need to do is follow the same exact steps that I followed, and you can be here too. And the problem with that is that we are unique individuals. What worked for that person and what works for me are completely different. But we buy into that, right? We buy into it and we say, all I have to do is do these 10 steps and I too can have that. That's brilliant. When it inevitably doesn't work for us, we look at ourselves as the problem. It's the same way. And I think this plagues, I'm sure it plagues people of all genders, but I know it plagues women and the female experience. We go into a dressing room and we find this beautiful dress and we try it on and it doesn't look good on us. And instead of saying, this dress failed me, we say, oh, I failed this dress. And we go into this loop in our brain of, well, if I work out and if I eat healthy, I bet this dress will look really, really good on me in a week and a half or 2 weeks when I need to wear it. Instead of saying, this dress and the person who made this dress, good intentions aside, has completely failed me and my body and my vision for who I want to be. And the same is true of these sort of cheap manifestation methods of just follow my 10 steps and we'll get there. And so what I experienced that, right? I went through that. I went through coaches and business coaches and all of these things. And I realized that nobody had my answers because nobody had lived my life and nobody had had my experience. And the brilliant thing about human design was I got to understand just exactly how different I was from these human beings. And I got to look at that, at human design, and understand where even my lived experience had created some wonkiness between my lived experience and my design. And so when I look at manifestation, it's not looking over at my neighbor and figuring out what do they have that I don't have, right? When I coach people through manifestation, that is not where we start. I don't say, hey, what do you want? What does your neighbor have that you feel really envious of? Because that type of manifestation is never ending. There's always going to be a neighbor. There's always going to be someone else who has more than you, who you think, who you perceive looks better than you, who will be more attractive than you, who will have more money. There's always going to be someone. So it's not about looking over on, to your neighbor to see what you have. It is about closing the delta between who you're being and who you're meant to be. It's closing that delta between I've lived this lived experience with all of my societal conditioning, with all my family conditioning, with maybe a lens of sort of religiosity put on that, and all of my own traumatology. And I want to get to a place where I can live in my design. Again, not perfectly. I'm not going to be the perfect 4/6 emotional manifester, but I get to live in a life that is full of more flow. So what do I need to do? What work do I need to do? What do I need to clear for me to be able to live in that flow? And oftentimes it comes to our subconscious beliefs. And so my manifestation principles are based on some incredible neuroscience work that's being done by the name of a scientist named John Dylan Haynes. And his work basically shows us that the subconscious mind makes decisions 5 to 7 full seconds before the conscious mind has any idea that we're making that decision. So my subconscious mind knew that I was going to come on this show and do this work with you before my conscious mind was able to kind of grasp that. And what's fascinating about that is that the subconscious mind is formed between the ages of 0 and 8. And even if you had the most beautiful childhood, it still was informed by a lot of modeling and a lot of lessons and a lot of experiences that may not suit you as an adult. One of the ones that has been really present for me in helping me manifest the business that I have and the life that I have was understanding my father's an entrepreneur, and he has a very, standard immigrant entrepreneur story, came to this country with $200 in his pocket and made himself something. And what I realized in my early journey and early days of entrepreneurship was that I had this belief that entrepreneurship had to be really hard. It had to be a slog. You had to work way more. Growing up, I thought people worked on Saturdays. I didn't know people didn't work on Saturdays because my dad just worked every Saturday. And I had this belief, based on what I had seen and what had been modeled to me through no fault of my father's, right? Just through him working hard and raising a family, that this was hard. And all he wanted was for us to be able to go to school, have better education than he had, and not have to be entrepreneurs. And here I am today. And he's less than thrilled, but it's also okay. So I had to reverse that thought, and I had to really go inside myself and understand that thought, while it protected me as a child and helped me get an amazing education, no longer served me as an adult and no longer served me as an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And I did that. And I recommend doing that through hypnotherapy. So you can get back into the subconscious mind by your brain being in what we call theta brainwave state, which you can do through deep meditation, therapy called EMDR, hypnotherapy, and various other practices. But I find that for me, hypnotherapy has been like my biggest life hack, because it also eradicated the belief that healing has to be hard and mucky and sticky and not fun. It can be enjoyable. It can feel like a nap, right? Hypnotherapy feels like a nap sometimes. So my my sort of thesis around manifestation is that we have to go through these 4 steps. We have to assess, right? Who are we? And that's where we do a lot of the human design work. Who am I really? What's the essence of my energy? How am I cosmically made to move through this world? And then we go into like alignment. So we take that manifestation, whatever we want in that season, and we say, is this aligned to who I am? So a great example here is when someone says, I really want to work on my health and wellness and my fitness, and I'm going to go to the gym at 5 a.m. every day for the next month, and we're going to manifest an incredible body and incredible health. And then I look at their chart and I see that there's a lot of indicators in their chart that tells me that they're not made to be consistent. And so I say, is this aligned? And we look at it and we say, no, it's not aligned. And actually for this unique person and their unique version, consistency could actually be more harmful because they're going anti-energy than it could be helpful. And so a health and wellness journey for this person doesn't look like what the fitfluencers on Instagram are telling them that it, quote, quote, should look like. And so it's really about kind of finding that alignment and understanding, is what I want aligned with who I am? And usually what you want can be aligned with who you are. It's just how you decide that you're going to go out and get it. The next stage is clearing, right? We do that clearing work. We understand what are the limiting beliefs that are holding me back. Recently, I realized that I had deep, deep, deep fears around success. I thought that being really successful put a price on my head, put a target on my back, that someone could come take me down. I don't know where that came from. I had no clue. I took that through hypnotherapy with my incredible hypnotherapist. And it made me realize, like, that's so crazy, right? But we get to the bottom of those fears. We get to that understanding, and we're able to clear those away to get to that 4th step, which is manifestation. And in that last stage, we realize that sometimes our manifestations are brought to us in a different form than we expected, right? So that person might say that they went out to fix their health and wellness, and they thought that it was going to look like having a 6-pack, but actually the next time they went to the doctor, their cholesterol was lowered or their stress hormones were lowered. And so sometimes that 4th stage of manifestation is about doing a little bit of digging to celebrate the manifestation actually being there for you without, it being the exact way that you expected for it to come up.
That's totally landing. So celebrating as well. Like even I think I'm hearing you say the ability to even see it. Like, because it didn't show up in the form, like let's say it was greater fitness, and instead of the bulging pectorals, it actually was the lowering of the blood pressure that will also prevent the heart disease and
right,
and the demise that you were afraid of. Yeah. And then celebrating.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Coming into awareness. I love that. That sounds so, it really does sound much more individualized than, just follow these 10 steps, no matter who you are.
Yeah. That's the first thing I say to my clients, right? Before they invest in working together is, I don't have your answers, right? You have your answers, and I'm going to help guide you to get there, because I am not here to write a prescription plan for this person's particular manifestation style. I can help them unveil a lot of information about themselves that they can then kind of compare and look at through the lens of their entire lived experience, right? No matter how much therapy, no matter how many people you see, you're not going to be able to download an entire actual life of lived experience, until maybe there's like ways for us to put our brains into computers and weird stuff like that. But there's just not going to be a way for me to understand the way something that is impacting you better than you. And so much of that is empowering people to say, I'm on my own journey and that's okay. And the way that I find, these traditional manifestations, abundance, health, love, a lot of them kind of circle around those big things, those big themes, is going to be in a completely different journey than the way that my neighbor is, and the way that my partner is, and the way that my children are, and the way that my parents would have, and the way that you, Nikki, are doing it.
Wow. I thank you. And I feel as though you have also vulnerably shared some of your, I loved your use of the word traumatology. Is that coined by you?
It's not. It's I don't know if it's coined by a friend of mine. His name is Shai Fishman. I think it is, but I'll have to ask. But I
Traumatology.
heard it through him, and really this idea that like we all have our own complete understanding
Hmm.
of trauma and the traumas that we've gone through.
Yeah.
Um, and it's different, right, from even our therapists and all of our healers. And we need to take responsibility for that
Mhm.
if we want to heal it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Someone said, like, mine your gold, in the sense of your wounds are gold,
Yeah.
because in that wounding, in that traumatology, the stories that we made up, I like to use the word misbeliefs.
Mm,
These, we just base our existence so easily on those beliefs that were planted in us, just simply by watching our dad kind of toil and work on Saturdays and run his own business. We interpreted that, there, if I ever have my own business, that's going to be like the hardest path ever.
yeah.
There's no easy button, there's no making it fit me, it's just going to be hard.
Yeah.
And
And
so
we
I
have so many of those beliefs, like from what kids said to us on the playground as kids to the inherited trauma from our lineage and our families, and just the belief systems that we were brought up in. There's so many. One of my biggest ahas came from looking at my experience in the first grade, which like I had only remembered as this incredible time. I had a great teacher, just like your pinnacle first grade, sweetest woman ever, at an incredible school with, a very diverse population. And even the things that I realized happened in that classroom so projected kind of the future that I would have. One experience, and I tell two stories from this classroom. I'm a June baby, so I'm a late bloomer. And I we had this poster on the wall in my first grade classroom of all of the months of the year and all of the times that everybody lost their teeth, right? That's like a big thing when you're in first grade kindergarten, losing your first tooth or even losing any teeth. So everybody's name would be up there. And I looked at it all the time. I hadn't lost my first tooth, super late bloomer. And finally, the last day of first grade, I run into this classroom and I'm like huffing and puffing. And my teacher's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, yeah, I'm fine. Where's the poster? Like, you took the poster down. It's the last day of school. She's taking everything down. I finally lost my first tooth. Right. And she's like, "Oh, poor kid," was just dying to put her name on this chart.
Yeah.
And I realized like that, I'm a late bloomer, and I somehow associated that with being bad or being not enough. And so I was so hell-bent so much of my life on hiding that and not being that late bloomer and making sure no one knew that I was last. And so I was, charging first.
Mhm.
And the other experience in that same classroom was I sat next to a little boy and we were doing our handwriting exercises. And, I'm just going at my own pace and focused on my work. And, he slams down his pencil and he's looking around and he's like, "Oh, wow, you haven't finished yet? You're slow. You must be stupid." And it's like a totally normal first grade boy thing to say,
Mhm.
but it instilled further in that late bloomer of me and that person who was taking their time. I probably wasn't even slow at all. I was probably like going at the correct pace. This kid was probably just like losing it. Who knows? And I instilled that, this little snot-nosed boy, I didn't want to ever feel that way again, right? I never want to feel that I was slower or that someone could outpace me. And I ran like hell through my life. I look at it, looking back, I did my undergraduate degree in 3 years. I did my MBA in one. Nobody asked me to do this. This was not for any reason. Nobody even celebrated that I was doing this. They just all thought I was totally crazy. And I just raced through life because I had this belief that slow was bad.
Mm.
And that had been instilled, far, far, far back. And so when I was able to look at this kind of under my own microscope and under my lens of human design, I understood that my energy was made to work in bursts and then deep rest. So while I did have the capacity to work really, 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 really fast sometimes, most of the time, probably like an 80-20 rule, I needed to be resting and sort of saving up my energy to be able to create those bursts. But that, before I understood that, led me to a life of complete and utter burnout, made it to the quote top of my career, had the title and the office and the salary and the frequent flyer miles of anyone who would, be considered successful at a pretty young age. But I was physically ill, emotionally bankrupt, mentally just completely unstable. And I was manifesting reverse, right? I was manifesting the bad constantly. I would get an amazing new job with a great salary with an emotionally abusive boss, right? I was just not manifesting the highest and best for myself because that's what I was magnetic to. And so it's so important to go through those old stories. And as you do it, more come up and you kind of are able to make sense of them. And they don't all have to be traumatic, right? I'm telling you two stories that completely impacted my life that have nothing to do with a traditional trauma. And so if there is trauma involved, making sure you're handling that with such caring and nourishing professionals that can really allow you to break down the meaning behind those things and let those sort of fuel your change.
That is so perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that, the whole journey. I've heard a quote before that what to an adult is not ideal, to a child can be trauma.
Yeah, I would agree.
So then I'm almost wondering, are adults constantly experiencing trauma as well? Or are we possibly just, we're getting opportunity, we're giving ourselves opportunity after opportunity to sit with our trauma from our past, our what wasn't ideal from our childhood. And then we have all of these opportunities showing up, begging us to go and do the shadow work, to go and look at those experiences and sit with them and bless them and bid them adieu. And yet we just keep like manifesting like more and more of like, no, I'm comfortable in this little box of woundedness. And, at least it's something I know I'm familiar with this trauma box, and it's horribly miserable, but it's also kind of comfortable because I know
it.
Yeah, because I know what to expect.
Yeah, one of my favorite authors is Gay Hendricks, and his work, The Big Leap. He really talks about how we seem to, as human beings, have a finite capacity for the good, for abundance, for love, for joy. Mm-hmm. And when we hit that ceiling, we self-impose what he calls an upper limit problem. If you've ever had something where you closed a big deal or had something wonderful happen only to have something else in a different part of your life just completely come tumbling down. And this idea that we manifest those things, we do those things subconsciously because we have the idea that there is a finite capacity. Mm-hmm. And only by observing ourselves doing this can we expand our capacity. Only by intentionally, whether it's a mantra or subconscious work or watching ourselves do this, can we say, I expand my capacity for abundance, for love and joy every day, and realize that you get to expand that. Right. Mm-hmm. And I joke that, there's someone in my life who has a really dull outlook on things. I joke that their capacity for joy is about the depth of a bottle cap. And it's like, we get to expand that. We get to choose a wider, deeper. And that's why you see people who've unlocked this, right? Who have unlocked certain manifestations, they attract more, right? Like attracts like.
Yeah. Yeah. We manifest what we believe we deserve.
And that's where the law of attraction information comes in and all of that kind of stuff, which, like I mentioned earlier, has its place for sure. But without going down and doing that deep shadow work, you're just going to keep triggering yourself
right.
over and over again.
Looking into the sun while standing in a pile of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
I really love that.
It's
That's
my favorite.
priceless. So that's kind of, it wraps up what you said about the how some perspectives of manifestation can be toxic. And I love that, I'm looking at the light, but I'm still standing in shit because I'm not willing
Yeah.
to look at point A. I'm just staring at point B, but I'm not at all. I'm choosing not to be conscious of point A.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I get to ask you about a gift that you are interested in sharing to our listeners today.
Yeah, so I'm so excited to share. I've created I call the ritual guide. And the ritual guide is really meant to help you move through your human design to figure out what rituals work best for you. And so, by nature, the word ritual we think of as like something we have to do every day, right? If I don't meditate every day, or if I don't draw my tarot cards, if I don't do my crystals, like it's not a ritual. And I don't agree with that. I think there's some people, and I'm one of them, who are not meant to do things consistently. So I sort of have this like almost like a grab bag where I know I like to give myself some time in the morning before my family wakes up and all this other stuff. But I don't have to do the same thing. Some days I might need journaling, and some days I might need a cup of ceremonial cacao, and some days I might need to listen to a podcast and go for a walk. But I give myself this space to understand what do I need. And so going through this ritual guide will tell you a little, you can kind of take your chart. You can download your chart, which you can do at my website, which is nikkibrafman.com/chart. And you can kind of side by side take a look at your chart and this ritual guide and say, oh, okay, I'm meant to do things this way, or I'm energetically meant to do things that way, and develop ritual practices that feel really, really aligned with your energy.
That sounds outstanding. I actually just clicked on that yesterday and I was like, "Ooh, I want to check this out." What are manifesting generators? What kind of rituals would serve me in, refueling? So thank you so much just for the viewer, let's talk to the viewer for a moment. You will find the link to Nikki's offer here on this page somewhere. And if not, then we will make sure that there's a list at the end of the series. And I do also want to invite everyone watching to keep an eye on your emails. Make sure to join the Facebook community called Awake Free Community. In there, we'll be sharing upcoming workshops about how to level up your life, how to return to that passion and excitement and fire and purpose that I feel like we all had when we were little munchkins running around. And then sometimes it starts to get a little muddled and we lose point A. And we're like, why am I not at point B? And we just, if you're struggling at all in any way, there will be some fun stuff there. So Nikki, thank you so much for your time and your generosity and just sharing your wisdom with myself and everyone here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Okay. Until next time.